It was still dark when I heard the pounding on my front door. Not a polite knock, not a neighborly tap. The kind of sound that pulls you straight out of sleep because your body decides something's wrong before your brain catches up. I checked the clock on my nightstand, 5:02 a.m. I live alone, so I did what I always do when something feels off. I stayed still for a second and listened. The house was quiet except for the heat kicking on and that hard, impatient pounding again. I pulled on a hoodie, walked down the hallway barefoot, and stopped at the door without turning on any lights. I didn't ask who it was yet. I just leaned in close enough to hear breathing on the other side. Then I opened it. My next-door neighbor was standing there. Evan Mercer. He'd moved in about a year ago. We'd exchanged the usual small talk over trash bins and mailboxes. Nothing more. He was the kind of person who kept his voice low and his routines consistent. I couldn't remember him ever knocking on my door at all, but now he looked like he'd run there. His face was pale, his shoulders were tense. He wasn't shaking exactly, but there was something strained in the way he held himself, like he was trying not to fall apart in front of me. He didn't greet me. He said, "Don't go to work today. Stay home. Just trust me." For a second, I honestly thought I misheard him. I stared at him in the porch light, trying to find the normal version of him in his expression. It wasn't there. "What are you talking about?" I asked. My voice came out calmer than I felt. "Did something happen?" He shook his head once, slow, like the movement cost him something. His eyes stayed fixed on mine, sharp and urgent. "I can't explain it right now," he said. "Just promise me you won't leave today. Not for any reason." The air outside was cold enough to sting. Behind him, the street was still dark, but I could see the faintest change in the sky. Early morning starting to thin out the night. Everything felt too normal for what he was saying. No sirens, no shouting, no obvious danger. Just my quiet street. And my neighbor looking like a man who'd seen a fire before anyone smelled smoke. "Evan," I said, keeping my hand on the door edge, "you're scaring me. Why shouldn't I go?" He hesitated. His eyes flicked past me into my house, like he was checking something without wanting to be obvious. Then he leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "You'll understand by noon," he said. Before I could ask a second question, he stepped back. He glanced up and down the street, quick, controlled, then turned and walked back to his place. He didn't look over his shoulder. He just went inside and shut his door. I stood there for a moment with my hand still on the knob, the cold air drifting in around my ankles. A rational part of me tried to label it stress, a panic episode, a misunderstanding, anything that made sense. But another part of me, older, quieter, the part that watches details, didn't like the way he'd checked the street before leaving. And it didn't like the way he'd said noon, like it was an appointment. There was also something else. Something I hadn't been saying out loud. 3 months earlier, I'd lost my father. The official report said it was a stroke. Sudden, unavoidable, clean on paper. But in the week before it happened, he kept telling me he needed to show me something important. Every time I pressed him, he would soften his voice and say, "It's about our family. It's time you knew." We never had that conversation. Since then, small things had started happening, things that didn't fit my life. A car with dark windows parked near my driveway for long stretches, engine off, like it was waiting. Calls from blocked numbers where no one spoke. My younger brother Caleb, who works abroad, asking questions that didn't sound casual. Asking if I'd noticed anyone new nearby. Asking if I'd been careful with my routines. I told myself I was grieving. That grief makes you suspicious. That stress makes patterns out of noise. But standing in my doorway at 5:02 a.m., watching Evan disappear back into his house, it didn't feel like noise. My name is Lauren Bishop. I'm 34, and I work as a risk analyst at a mid-size investment firm in downtown Charlotte. I'm not the type to skip work. I don't call out unless I'm sick, and I'm rarely sick. My life is structured on purpose, predictable on purpose. I live in the house my aunt left me, quiet street, old trees, neighbors who wave and keep moving, that kind of place. Until that morning. I stood there thinking it through in the most practical way I could. If Evan was wrong, the cost was a personal day and a slightly annoyed manager. If he was right, I didn't want to guess what the cost would be, so I texted my supervisor, "Personal emergency, can't make it in today." Then I locked the door, set my phone face down on the kitchen table, and waited. By mid-morning, the house felt louder than it should have. The refrigerator hum, the ticking clock, wind brushing the window like fingers. I made coffee I didn't really want, mostly to have something to do with my hands. At 11:30, I stared at the time and felt a thin kind of embarrassment start to creep in. Nothing had happened. Evan hadn't come back. The street outside looked normal. And then my phone rang. Unknown number. I picked it up, already preparing myself for a spam call or my supervisor asking questions. Instead, I heard a calm professional voice say, "Ma'am, this is Officer Grant with Mecklenburg County. Are you aware of a critical incident that occurred at your workplace this morning?" I didn't answer right away. I looked down at my coffee mug like it could tell me what to say. Then I said carefully, "What incident?" And the officer's next sentence made the room feel smaller. There was a brief pause on the line, like the officer was checking notes. "There was a violent incident at your office building this morning," he said. "Several employees were injured. We have reason to believe you were present." I sat down without realizing I'd moved. The chair scraped softly against the kitchen floor. "That's not possible," I said. "I didn't go in today." He didn't respond right away. When he did, his voice was still calm, but more careful. "We have footage of your vehicle entering the garage at 8:02 a.m. Your access badge was used at the main entrance. Security reports place you on the 3rd floor shortly before the emergency alert." My first instinct was to argue, to explain my routine, to say how predictable I am, but I didn't. I'd worked in risk analysis long enough to know that when facts don't line up, emotion only makes things worse. "I've been home all morning," I said instead. "I can prove that." "How?" he asked. I looked around my kitchen, the empty chair across from me, the quiet room, no witnesses, no cameras, no one to confirm anything. "I live alone," I said. That was when his tone shifted, not threatening, just procedural. At approximately 11:47 a.m., an emergency alert was triggered on the 3rd floor, he continued. "A coordinated attack occurred. You were reported missing from the scene." Missing. I pressed my free hand against the table, grounding myself in the cool surface. "Why would I be missing?" I asked, "if I wasn't there?" There was a longer pause this time. When he spoke again, he chose his words slowly. "Items belonging to you were recovered near the area of the incident." I closed my eyes. Keys, a bag, something small, something planted. That was when Evan's face came back to me, pale, focused. The way he'd said noon, like he'd circled it on a calendar. "I didn't lose anything," I said. "I didn't leave my house." "We'll need to verify that," the officer replied, "for your safety and for questioning." Questioning. I didn't ask what kind. Instead, I asked something else. "Did the footage show who got out of the car?" "The image is partially corrupted," he said. "The license plate is clear? The face is not." My pulse stayed steady, but my thoughts didn't. Someone had access to my car, or a copy of it. Someone had my badge. Someone wanted it to look clean. "Units will be arriving at your address shortly," he said. "Please do not leave." The call ended before I could respond. I sat there for a moment, phone still pressed to my ear, listening to nothing. Then I set it down, face down, exactly where it had been before. The house didn't feel safe anymore. Not dangerous, just compromised, like something had already been decided without me. I closed the blinds one by one, locked the back door, then the front. Each click felt deliberate, not panicked, methodical. As I moved through the house, I replayed the past few weeks with a different filter. The email from an unfamiliar address asking if I'd be in the office on Tuesday, the one I'd ignored. The faint smell of cologne one evening when I'd gotten home late. The sense that a drawer in my bedroom hadn't been closed the way I left it. It hadn't been random. It had been preparation. That's when there was a knock at the door. Not loud, not frantic, controlled. 3 steady taps. I didn't answer. Another knock. Same rhythm. Then a voice I recognized. "Lauren, it's Evan." My stomach tightened, but my mind stayed clear. I didn't move closer. I spoke through the door. "How did you know the police would call me?" There was no hesitation in his reply. "Because they're not coming to help you," he said. "They're coming to take you into federal custody." I rested my forehead briefly against the doorframe. You were never meant to wake up in your own bed today, he continued. They just adjusted the plan. What plan? I asked. They staged the incident to eliminate everyone in that building, he said. You were supposed to be there, not as a victim, as the one they blamed. I didn't respond. Silence felt like the right choice. They need you alive now, he added. Long enough to confess to something you didn't do. I thought of my father, of unfinished sentences, of the way he'd avoided details while still trying to prepare me. Why are you telling me this? I asked. There was a pause. I could hear him shift his weight on the porch. Because your father asked me to, he said. That landed differently. I unlocked the door, but I didn't open it yet. My father was an accountant, I said. A careful one. He wasn't, Evan replied quietly. That was just the job that fit. I opened the door partway. He stepped inside without being invited and closed it behind him. Not rudely, just efficiently. They're already on their way, he said. You have minutes before this house becomes evidence. I folded my arms, steadying myself. Then start explaining. He looked at me for a long moment, then reached into his jacket. There's something he left for you, he said. Evan pulled out a slim, dark envelope and set it on the kitchen counter between us. He didn't slide it toward me. He didn't dramatize it. He just placed it there, like a document that had waited long enough. Your father gave this to me 2 years ago, he said. He told me not to hand it to you unless certain conditions were met. I didn't touch it yet. I watched his hands instead. They were steady. No tremor, no hesitation. What conditions? I asked. If you were ever flagged, he said, or framed, or formally contacted about an incident you couldn't possibly be involved in, I exhaled through my nose. That's a wide definition, he nodded once. He thought so, too. I opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded carefully. My father's handwriting was neat but dense, the kind he used when he didn't want to waste space. I recognized it immediately. Seeing it again did something quiet but physical to me, like pressure behind the ribs. Lauren, if you are reading this, then the situation I feared has arrived ahead of schedule. You are not in danger because of anything you did. You are in danger because of who you are and what you were connected to before you were old enough to consent to anything at all. I stopped reading for a moment. Evan didn't rush me. There is more to your identity than your records show, more to my work than I ever admitted to you. I tried to delay this as long as possible. If they approach you directly, do not go with them voluntarily. The process does not end with questioning. It ends with disappearance. Trust Evan. He has access I do not, and time I no longer have. I folded the letter back the way it had been. When I looked up, Evan was watching my reaction, not my face. He was reading my posture, my breathing, like he expected something specific. You moved in next door to watch me? I said, yes. Not to be friendly. No, not to intervene unless necessary. Yes. I leaned back against the counter. My heartbeat stayed even. That surprised me. You knew my father, I said. I worked with him, Evan replied. Indirectly at first, then closely. He never mentioned you. That was intentional. I nodded once. That tracked. You said federal custody, I said, not arrest. They won't book you, he said. They'll reclassify you. Reclassify me as what? He paused, just long enough to be deliberate. As an asset. I didn't laugh. I didn't ask him to clarify. I reached for something else instead. Control. Okay, I said. Then we're already past the emotional part. Let's talk logistics. That seemed to catch his attention. They think I was in my office at 8:02, I continued. They think I vanished before 11:47. That means they expect confusion, not resistance, which means they're operating on a timeline. Yes. And they need me cooperative, I added. Alive, presentable, quiet. Yes. So if they wanted me gone, I said I'd already be gone? Evan studied me for a second, then nodded. Your father always said you'd get there faster than he did. I let that sit. Then here's what we're not going to do, I said. We're not running blindly. We're not destroying evidence. and we're not confronting anyone without documentation." He didn't interrupt. "Step 1, I continued. I need to understand what part of my identity is valuable enough to stage a public crime around. Step 2, I said. I need to know who has access to my records, my car, and my badge. Step 3, I said. We decide whether silence protects me or exposes me." I looked at him. That's the order. For the first time since he'd entered my house, Evan's expression shifted. Not relief, recognition. "That's exactly how your father approached it," he said. He reached into his jacket again, this time slower, and pulled out a slim access card. Matte black, no logo, just a red identifier stripe along the edge. "This belonged to him," Evan said. "He used it to access a secure storage vault he never told you about." I didn't take it yet. "Where?" I asked. "Outside the city," he said. "Old infrastructure, offline storage, the kind no one checks unless they already know it exists." "And what's in it?" "Financial trails, program logs, names tied to procurement and oversight. Enough to prove the incident today wasn't random." I finally took the card. At that exact moment, faint but unmistakable, I heard the sound of engines slowing outside. Not sirens, just vehicles moving with intent. Evan glanced toward the front window. "They're closer than I thought," he said. I closed my hand around the card. Then I waited. The vehicles didn't stop right away. They slowed, repositioned, then idled, just out of sight. No lights, no urgency. That told me everything I needed to know. "They're waiting to see what you do," I said. Evan nodded. "They want compliance. Panic complicates paperwork." I took a breath and centered myself. "Then we don't panic," I said. "We move clean." I walked to the hallway closet and pulled my laptop bag from the shelf, not rushing, just enough speed to matter. I set it on the table and opened it. "What are you doing?" Evan asked. "Preserving my baseline," I said. "If I disappear, my absence becomes suspicious. If my systems stay active, it buys time." I opened my laptop and logged in. Everything looked normal. That bothered me more than a locked account would have. "Step 1, I said, mostly to myself. I leave a digital trail that says I expected this. I forwarded my last 5 work emails to a secure personal account. I scheduled 2 messages, one to my supervisor, one to HR, both neutral, both time-stamped for later that afternoon. Nothing accusatory, just procedural, proof of intent. Evan watched without interrupting. "Step 2, I continued. We control physical movement." I grabbed my keys, the real ones. I turned them over in my palm. "They already have a version of my car," I said, "so we don't use mine." "Agreed," Evan replied. "Mine's in the alley behind the block." "Unmarked?" He nodded. "Good." I slipped the access card into the inner pocket of my jacket and zipped it closed. Then I walked through the house one last time, not for sentiment, for pattern. I straightened a chair, turned off the lamp, left the kitchen clean. If someone walked in later, I wanted it to look paused, not abandoned. When I came back to the front room, Evan was standing near the door, listening. "They've moved," he said quietly. I didn't look through the window. I already knew. "Before we leave," I said, "I need one more thing." He raised an eyebrow. "Transparency," I said. "No more partial truths." He considered that. Then he reached into his jacket again, not the inside pocket this time, but the side. He pulled out a thin tablet and powered it on. "This is a restricted profile," he said. "It was flagged last month." The screen lit up. My name was at the top, not my full name, just Bishop, L. Below it was a designation code, then a line that made my throat tighten. Subject status, elevated priority, retrieval window active. I scrolled. There were medical references I didn't recognize, blood markers, immunity annotations, notes about early childhood screenings I had no memory of. "This isn't surveillance," I said quietly. "This is classification." "Yes," Evan said. "Your father discovered irregularities in your medical records when you were young, samples taken without authorization, tests repeated without explanation." I kept scrolling. A line caught my eye. Phase advancement triggered. Age 34. I stopped. My birthday was 3 weeks ago, I said. That's why today happened, he replied. Your profile crossed a threshold. I locked the tablet and handed it back. They weren't trying to protect anyone at my office, I said. They were building a narrative. Yes. And if I'd been there, I added, I'd either be dead or unavailable. Yes. Outside, a door opened. A voice carried faintly through the glass. Calm, professional. Time, Evan said. I didn't hesitate. We moved through the back of the house and out into the narrow alley. His SUV was parked exactly where he said it would be, engine cold, no rush. As soon as my door closed, he started it. We pulled away just as 2 black vehicles turned onto my street. No lights, no sirens, just intent. I watched them through the side mirror as we merged onto the main road. No one followed, not yet. Evan drove in silence for several minutes. The city fell away, traffic thinned, trees replaced buildings. After a while, he spoke. There's something you need to see before we reach the vault, he said. He handed me the tablet again. This explains why they've been watching you your whole life. I looked down at the screen as the road stretched forward into quiet. The file opened automatically. At the top of the screen was my name again. Below it, a designation number. Then a heading that felt clinical in a way I couldn't soften. Genomic Profile Summary. I scrolled slowly. Not because I was afraid, but because I'd learned that rushing past information never makes it less real. Charts filled the screen, blood markers compared against standard baselines. Notes written in language meant to be precise, not reassuring. Atypical immune response observed. Regenerative indicators present. No adverse expression detected. I stopped scrolling. This isn't about finance or surveillance, I said. It's biomedical. Yes, Evan replied, eyes still on the road. That was the part your father didn't fully understand at first. I continued reading. There were timestamps from my childhood. Routine checkups I remembered only vaguely. Follow-ups I'd been told were clerical errors. A line item referencing stored samples. Without consent, I said. Yes. And without symptoms, I added. Yes. I set the tablet on my lap and looked out the window. Trees blurred past, steady and indifferent. My father found this by accident, I said. Didn't he? He was reviewing a minor discrepancy in your insurance records, Evan said. One lab charge that didn't match a visit. He pulled the thread. And they noticed, I said. They noticed immediately. I let that settle. So today wasn't about recovery, I said. It was about control. Yes. And the incident at my office, I continued, wasn't designed to remove me quietly. It was designed to make me untouchable. Evan nodded. If the public believes you're dangerous, no one asks where you go. I thought about the officer's tone, calm, careful, procedural. They weren't lying, I said. They were operating inside a story already written. That's how it works, Evan said. Paperwork first, people second. The SUV slowed as we turned off the highway and onto a narrower road. The trees grew denser. The air felt cooler. Before we go any further, I said, there's something we need to be clear about. Evan glanced at me. I'm not negotiating my freedom for safety, I said. And I'm not disappearing so someone else can decide what I am. He nodded once. Your father said the same thing. Good, I said. Then we're aligned. We reached a clearing where an old access road cut into the hillside, half hidden, overgrown, the kind of place you'd pass without noticing unless you were looking for it. Evan parked and shut off the engine. This is as far as the vehicle goes, he said. We stepped out into the quiet. No sirens, no voices, just wind moving through trees. Ahead of us, set into the earth, was a reinforced steel door. Weathered, unmarked, forgettable by design. This is the vault, Evan said. Once it opens, everything changes. I rested my hand in my jacket pocket, feeling the edge of the access card. What happens if I don't open it? I asked. Then they'll keep trying, he said, with better stories. I stepped forward. The panel beside the door lit up when I approached. A soft tone sounded, neutral and expectant. "Your father said it would recognize you," Evan said. "Not the card." I placed my palm against the scanner. There was a brief pulse of warmth. A pause. Then a quiet confirmation chime. The door unlocked. As it opened, cool air spilled out, carrying the faint scent of metal and paper. The kind of smell you only notice in places that have been sealed for a long time. Inside, shelves lined the walls, black storage cases, labeled, ordered. At the center of the room was a small glass pedestal. On it sat a leather-bound notebook. I recognized it immediately. "My father's," I said. Evan stayed near the door. "This is where I stop leading," he said. "What happens next is yours." I stepped forward and reached for the journal. And then I paused, not from fear, from understanding, because whatever was written inside wasn't just information, it was a line, and once I crossed it, there would be no going back. I opened the journal carefully, like the paper might react to impatience. My father's handwriting filled the first page, not rushed, not emotional, the same controlled style he used for tax notes and household lists. That steadiness grounded me more than any reassurance could have. "Lauren, if you are reading this here, then they have moved faster than I expected. That means the margin for error is gone, but the truth is still intact." I sat down on the low bench beside the pedestal and kept reading. He didn't write in metaphors. He wrote in timelines, dates, file numbers, meeting locations. He documented when the medical inconsistencies first appeared in my childhood records, when unauthorized blood samples were logged, when requests came in under departments that technically didn't exist. He listed names, not dozens, just enough. Procurement officers, oversight signatories, shell foundations that moved money quietly between agencies and private labs. This wasn't a theory, it was accounting. "There," I said softly, turning the journal so Evan could see. "That's how he stayed alive as long as he did. He treated it like an audit." Evan nodded. He knew emotion gets dismissed. Numbers don't. I flipped to the final section. A folded page fell out, heavier than the rest. It was a printed flowchart, 2 paths branching from a single decision point. At the top, Rowan Bishop Initiative End State Protocol. One branch was labeled Acquisition Compliance, Controlled Custody, Non-Disclosure, Long-Term Containment under Medical Authority. The other was labeled Public Disclosure Cascade. Below it was a list of preloaded destinations, media outlets, international watchdog groups, financial regulators, independent labs, all time-stamped, all ready. At the bottom, in my father's handwriting, "You don't owe the world your silence. You don't owe them your body. You only owe yourself the truth." I sat back. "They built a system assuming you'd want safety," Evan said quietly. "He built one assuming you'd want agency." I stood and walked to the terminal at the far end of the vault. 2 illuminated options waited under glass. No alarms, no countdown, just a decision. I thought about my house, my job, my routines, the life that had felt small but honest. Then I thought about the people at my office who'd been hurt to make a story believable, about how easily a narrative could erase a person. "They're already treating me like a risk," I said. "So silence doesn't protect anyone." Evan didn't respond. He didn't need to. I pressed the second option. The screen confirmed execution. Data packets began transferring, slow, deliberate, irreversible. A progress bar moved steadily forward. No music, no drama, just process. "This will make you visible," Evan said. "I already was," I replied. "I just didn't know it." The transfer completed. A confirmation line appeared. "Disclosure complete. External verification pending." Almost immediately, alarms began to sound. Not loud, but persistent. Motion alerts, perimeter activity. "They've found the site," Evan said. "Expected," I replied. We moved through the secondary exit tunnel as the vault began its automatic lockdown sequence. The door sealed behind us with a low, final sound. Outside, the sky was darkening. Helicopter rotors thudded somewhere far off. Searchlights swept the tree line, methodical and wide. We didn't run, we walked. "They can't undo what's been released," Evan said as we reached the edge of the clearing. "Too many hands now." I took one last look at the bunker, already blending back into the hillside. "My father didn't die protecting me," I said. "He died protecting choice." Evan nodded. We reached the vehicle and got in, the forest closing around us again as we pulled away. For the first time all day, I felt something settle. Not victory. Alignment. And as the road carried us forward, I knew the hardest part wasn't what I'd just done. It was what came next. By the time the sky began to lighten, we were nowhere near the city. Evan dropped me at a small rental house owned through a trust my father had set up years earlier. Nothing dramatic, one story, clean, quiet, the kind of place people pass without remembering. Inside, I did something simple. I washed my hands. I stood at the sink longer than necessary, letting the water run warm, watching it move over my skin like it always had. Ordinary, real, mine. Then I made tea. I sat at the small kitchen table and drank it slowly, phone face down, notifications muted. Somewhere, people were reading documents they'd never expected to see. Somewhere, explanations were being demanded. Somewhere, timelines were being rebuilt without me in the dark. But none of that needed my immediate attention. What mattered was that for the first time, my life wasn't being steered by gaps in information. Silence was no longer something being done to me. It was something I was choosing. Later that morning, I organized the few things I'd brought with me. Clothes folded, bag zipped, nothing rushed, nothing hidden. Before leaving, Evan paused at the door. "This won't stop with you," he said. "There are others, different names, similar patterns." I nodded. "Then someone will notice them sooner." That was all that needed to be said. After he left, I opened my laptop and read one message. Just one. A confirmation from an independent lab acknowledging receipt of the files and requesting verification samples. Through counsel, through process. Clean, slow, real. I closed the laptop. Outside, the neighborhood was waking up. A dog barked. Someone started a car. Life continued, not knowing how close it had come to being shaped quietly without consent. I stepped onto the porch and breathed in the morning air. I wasn't hiding, I wasn't running, I was simply present. And if you stayed with me through this story, thank you. If it resonated with you, if you believe the truth should be handled carefully but never buried, go ahead and like the video and subscribe. It helps this community grow. Let me know in the comments what city you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. I read more of them than you might think. 2 more stories will be waiting for you next. Both very different, both just as real. Take care of yourself.